First, let's start with this case. My mom used to study in a small high school in a small, well-knit area where everyone knew everyone. So after she graduated, she still held contact with a lot of people. Gradually, she stopped talking to them until only a few students from her classes in high school were left. One day, these people decided to make a class group and added everyone from that class in it. My mom was also added. They would host an annual reunion every year and would pool money and stay at resorts or go out to dinners. Now here's where the problem starts. My mom does not live in a close-by area, as most of them do. So going to these reunions by booking expensive flights makes no sense, as it's only for a day or two. And my mom generally doesn't want to participate in such activities, as she wasn't as well connected with them. She has her own group of amazing friends she goes out with once a year for almost a week and comes back. Her absence in almost every reunion party doesn't go unnoticed, and people talk behind her back a lot. She doesn't pay it much mind, though, because she simply doesn't care. This group of people hosted a party very recently and shared pictures in the group chat, taunting people who didn't come, including my mom. I've asked my mom to leave the group, but she's a very timid lady who doesn't like unnecessary fight, so she doesn't. The organizer of the party, a lady who mom didn't like but never voiced out then, asked all the people to pay their share. Everyone did and sent screenshots. Then she started naming people who did not go to the party, including my mom, and asked them to pay too. My mom obviously refused as she hadn't even been there, but then this gang of 3 to 4 ladies started calling her out on how she never attended, and this was a lesson for not attending. My mom very politely said no and closed the chat. Fast forward 5 hours, and she's being spammed with messages calling her selfish and self-centered, and saying things like she was better off than the people who did attend the party, and paying the amount wouldn't hurt her pockets at all. Mind you, people here literally have business that are very successful. My mom promptly refused and then sent a long paragraph explaining her absence and how these people are not worth it, and like a boss left the chat. The people still are sending her rude and snarky comments, though. My mom started doubting her actions and thinks she did something wrong despite me telling her she did the right thing. I told her to let me post this and let the general public agree if the toxic people are right or she's right. She agreed. So who do you think is the idiot? Update. Everyone, thank you so much for actually making sense. I showed this to her and we had a conversation and she agreed to cut everyone off. To clarify, my mom did say to them that she would not be attending the reunion party and has been doing so with every invite. Mom told them to shut up and left a simple message of how they should mind their own business and stop being a-holes. I am so thankful and honestly relieved she cut them off. Thank you, everyone. Let's start judging. Your mom is not in the wrong. I suggest she reply in the group chat. Why should I pay to be verbally abused when you have just proven I can get bullied for free? You're not in the wrong. Please show your mom the overwhelming amount of people saying she is not responsible for funding a party, especially one she didn't attend. These women obviously never grew up from high school. Please help your mom click the unfollow button on these people. Very obviously, you're not in the wrong. Obviously, don't pay for something you don't participate in. It's not even a case where she wasn't able to go at the last minute. The people who organized that did a poor job if they did not ask for an RSVP to not overshoot it. And if they did ask for an RSVP to their event, why would the other pay? Also, I can't imagine that in a large group like that, your mom was the only one to not attend the reunion. They're just bullies and rude. She was right to leave the chat. Block them and don't give them more attention. They are not worth it and will feed on it. Next up, I, 22, have an older brother, John, 32, who has been with his fiancée, Jane, 30F, for 4 years. They have a 4-month-old. Jane found out she was pregnant at 5.5 weeks and immediately called my mom to tell her. Mom was confused, but still very excited. Jane said she was going to tell John when he got back from his work trip. A few hours later, she called again, sobbing, saying she has insatiable cravings. Mom made a joke like, "Isn't it a bit early for cravings?" and Jane went off on her. She started yelling about how this was her pregnancy and no one else's. It was an odd reaction. She also apologized for her outburst by blaming it on hormones. When my brother returned from his trip, him and Jane left to stay at her mother's, and we didn't see her until after the baby was born. John said this was because Jane was afraid of losing the pregnancy and wanted to be with her mum, and we needed to respect boundaries. Whenever someone would ask about Jane or the baby, they would shut it down with vague answers like, "Every pregnancy is different," or "She's carrying small," which isn't unusual. They barely shared anything about the pregnancy. No ultrasound pictures, no baby shower, and Jane didn't want anyone around during the delivery. I also discovered that every craving she listed came from one article about pregnancy cravings. She even listed multiple items in the same order as the article. When the baby was born, we were finally allowed to see Jane and John. And baby, of course. It was very bittersweet as we all wished we could have been there for Jane to help out. But Jane and John both reassured us that we did help out by staying away during the pregnancy. The weirdest part, though, is how Jane describes the birth. She claims she had an epidural via IV drip into her hand, edited BC I didn't elaborate, which is not how those are administered. When I asked clarifying questions, thinking she had gotten confused, which is understandable, she shut down and refused to answer, like how she would during the pregnancy. She said the baby had latching issues because he was born with no umbilical cord stump. This can technically happen, but it's a rare and fatal medical condition that their baby does not have. The final straw was when she told us that the baby basically fell out of her within an hour of being in labor. Despite my brother telling us how hard the birth was, and even stating that was why they weren't going to try for any more kids. Mum is on the same side as me, and has been noting these inconsistencies and inaccuracies, but doesn't know how to bring it up. And their reactions don't help. A few days ago, my brother texted Mum saying her doubt of Jane is disrespectful, and they both want full apologies from the both of us for bullying Jane about her pregnancy/labor. I haven't made any outright accusations about it, nor have I said any of this to Jane. I've only asked questions when she brings the birth pregnancy up. Am I in the wrong for having doubts? Let's start judging. The reality is that nothing much adds up, but there is one reality you can buy into. Your brother and his fiancée have a baby that is theirs. You can remain out of their lives forever, or let your obsession go and enjoy your niece-nephew. Your choice, but you would be an idiot if you chose option 1. I'm not sure about this one. There are a few options. Maybe they adopted/used a surrogate and didn't want to tell you. Maybe she is riddled with Munchausen's and the whole story is extra and not true. Or maybe she is telling the truth. At the end of the day, you know the baby, their baby, is here and real. I wouldn't focus on the ifs, but on the new addition to your family. Why do you feel you need to bring it up at all? Ease. She may well be misremembering medical details and/or exaggerating, but it doesn't sound as though any of the things she has said are dangerous. For instance, cravings. Symptoms can be heavily influenced by a person's state of mind. It's entirely plausible that if she had been reading about pregnancy and was keyed up about her own, that she might have genuine cravings, even if she was influenced by what she read. It doesn't seem much different to situations where a pregnant person's spouse, partner, develops pregnancy symptoms. Assuming that an IV or pain relief given during labor was an epidural doesn't sound particularly surprising, if the association she has with the term is that epidural equals pain relief for labor. It's also possible she had both, of course. Similarly, pain and hormones and medication can all screw with your perception, not to mention things such as short-term memory. If her perception is that the birth was quick, that may well be subjectively true. By all means, keep in mind that she may not be a reliable narrator, particularly if it comes to medical matters. But other than that, just enjoy your nibbling. This is not a situation where you need to prove her wrong or set her right, and you're in the wrong if you continue to gossip. Also, why jump to lying, which implies ill intent? Next up, I'm 22M and just moved back into town so I could be closer to my sister, 11F. Quick backstory. My mom was married to my dad and had me, my twin sister, 22F, and our older brother, 30M. Then she married my stepfather and had my sister, 11F. We all hated the guy because he had addiction problems. 2 years later, my mom pulls the plug. After a couple years of shared custody, my former stepdad loses all custody after he gets one too many DUIs, and obviously was giving the middle finger to the notion of rehab. My mom has since remarried and cleaned up her act. She's tried to mend her relationship with us, and I appreciate her efforts. She's also become a nicer mom to my little sister than she ever was to us. However, because this is a small town, we hear that our former stepdad was back. My mom started saying that she feels bad that he and his daughter haven't seen each other in years. I admit that generally my little sister has seen her dad in a positive light and probably misses him, but obviously there's a reason he's told to stay away. My suspicions are confirmed when I ask why he wouldn't try to regain some form of visitation, and I realize that he still hasn't cleaned up. But my mom kept on saying that she wanted her daughter to reacquaint with her father because she misses him. And it was the consensus of my siblings and I that it was a hell no from us in regards to him coming near my sister. I told my mother to drop it, and she was upset but said okay. Then I heard from a nosy neighbor that she saw my ex-stepfather around the neighborhood. I wanted to give my mother the benefit of the doubt, but my sister confirmed it. I happened to be around the neighborhood when I saw my ex-stepfather coming out of the house the next time. And without thinking, I ended up calling the police. They come over and arrest my ex-stepfather, and they take my mother away as well. My mom's husband is out of town for the next week, and my little sister comes to live at my place. My mother is now saying that I betrayed her, and I was ultimately keeping my sister away from her father. My mother's husband and sister also called and said that just because the system declares something doesn't mean that it's the morally right decision to do, and that protecting my mother should have come first. I feel guilty that I might endanger my mother's custody prospects even, and that I've now put her under a giant flashlight. But am I in the wrong? I've seen my sister cry over not having her father around, but she doesn't know the truth about him. I know that in the process I betrayed my mother, and probably lost whatever good bond we had been building. I probably also ruined her efforts to clean up her life, and got her in trouble because she felt empathy for the father of her daughter. Let's start judging. So, I gather that the former stepfather didn't just lose custody, he was actually forbidden by the court to be around the little girl. Because, if that's the case, then you were right to call the cops. You can never be sure what a drug addict will do when they're high. If your mom wanted to allow him supervised visits, she should have gone through the courts properly. Some of your family may blame you, but the ones who take the brave steps are always called out. That doesn't make you wrong. You're not in the wrong. You're not in the wrong. It's a shame you seem to be the only one who actually cares about your 11-year-old sister's well-being. But the cops don't arrest someone for just visiting a household when they don't have custody. Something is being left out here. Most likely that there is a restraining order on him, probably for both your mother and your sister. And that's the only reason your mother would have been arrested, for deliberately choosing to violate the restraining order. You're not in the wrong. The morally right thing to do is protect your sister. Your mom is an adult and can make whatever decision she wants to, good or bad, unfortunately. I'm also wondering if her husband knew she was meeting up with her former husband when he was away. That feels sneaky too. Another indication that your mom knew her actions were not the best. Next up, I joined a women's social club 6 months ago because I've been struggling to make friends after relocating to a new-to-me city. It took me a while to warm up to the group and to connect with people I actually had anything in common with. I had to wade through a lot of Botox parties and boozy brunches to find things I was interested in. But I did, and I started coming to group events fairly often. I hang out most often with the women who like to read, do crafty things, bake, skywatch, etc. Among these women is one, I'll call her AmITheA, who has made several comments about how she's a total klepto. I think that she makes these comments to seem cool to the other people in the group. I reached out to some of the women I see regularly at these events and invited them over to my place to watch a TV show we'd been talking about and do crafty stuff. They were excited and agreed to come. Unfortunately, Andrea found out. I assume someone asked if she was going, and reached out to me to ask if she was invited. I considered this for a bit and then told her no, as I only had so much room at home. She didn't believe me and asked me for the real reason, saying, "I thought we got along," which, yes, is true. I told her I'm not comfortable inviting a kleptomaniac into my home, that I've worked hard to have the things I have, and it would be stupid for me to invite her knowing that she openly brags about it. She said, "Okay," very quietly. She then said, "You're painting me out to be some horrible criminal when you don't even know anything about me." I said that her being proud to call herself a klepto was all I needed to know. She said that I was a high school mean girl and ableist. I am unsure what the foundation for that statement is. This unfortunately has spilled over to the group, which is frustrating. But what has me the most surprised is that there are so many people defending her and telling me that I'm out of touch and take things too literally. Am I? Let's start judging. You're not in the wrong. Being a thief isn't the same as being a kleptomaniac or a klepto. One of the key factors of diagnosing kleptomania, which is a legit rare mental health disorder, is the roller coaster of emotions about the theft. A kleptomaniac will not tell virtual strangers that they have stolen because the shame is physically painful to them. Andrea is the ableist for rebranding kleptomania to justify her poor behavior. You're not in the wrong. I had a girl in my sorority describe herself as a self-diagnosed klepto, and that if she saw something she liked, she just couldn't help herself, be it something at a store, on campus, or in possession of one of us. After she took it, it became her property, and heaven forbid you try to get your things back. I refused to associate with her outside of meetings. I never hung out with her, let her in my car or dorm room, never let her near my purse or jacket in group settings. She cried that I was a bully. People like them are always going to play the victim. I'm very glad you're keeping your boundaries. You're not in the wrong. Those defending her are more than welcome to have Klepto Andy in their houses. I'd say no too. She isn't entitled to an invite to your home, no matter her circumstances. People who make these comments have to learn there are consequences to their behaviors, even if she is exaggerating the issue. You aren't an ableist or high school mean girl for protecting your property.